This episode is brought to you by Bound Hat Company. Discover Bound Hat Company, where high-quality hats meet a greater purpose. Each hat is designed not only for style, but also to give back, with proceeds supporting charities like the PTSD Foundation of America. Whether for the outdoors or everyday wear, Bound Hat Company has the perfect hat for any occasion. Shop now at www.boundhatco.com and join the movement to support veterans and meaningful causes. Bound Hat Co. Style that makes a difference.
The following podcast discusses sensitive topics. Listener discretion is advised. If you or someone you know is struggling, call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline for 24/7 confidential support.
Welcome to Survival in the Trenches, Life Beyond Loss, a podcast where we share the powerful stories of those who have faced extraordinary loss and found the strength to push forward and triumph. These are real journeys of resilience, courage, and hope. Join us as we uncover what it means to rise above, even in the darkest of times. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Survival in the Trenches. My name is Kelly Chandler, and I will be your host. Today, we are honored to sit down with Stephanie Battelle to talk about her life beyond loss and how she is turning tragedy into purpose. Welcome, Stephanie, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Now, before we dive into exactly why we're here today, we like to take a step back in time and get to know you as a person when you were younger and what your dreams and goals were at that stage in your life. So if you maybe want to start there.
Yeah. So I grew up in St. Charles and middle-class family. My parents were divorced and mom was remarried. My mom worked full-time, and so my brother and I were at home alone a lot and kind of had to learn how to be independent. And I was in gymnastics, which taught me a lot of self-discipline and motivation. And that's really where I spent a lot of my time. In school, school kind of came easy for me, but found some social life in high school and ended up meeting my first husband, and we got pregnant in high school. And my senior year of high school, I had my son Dale. So obviously my family wasn't thrilled about that, and that kind of put me on a journey of proving to the world that I could be the best mom and that I could make something of myself, even though I didn't maybe make the best choice in high school.
So when Dale was born and you're a senior in high school, how did you handle that as someone that's 17, 18 years old?
Yeah. I was so happy. I loved being a mom. Like, everyone was doing their thing in high school and going to football games, and I got into like cross stitching a little baby thing for him when he was for his room. And I loved being a mom. I was so excited. I was so happy to share him with everyone. I brought him back to school because I had him in April of my senior year. And so I brought him back to school to show everybody just for a day to visit. But one thing I know is because of my self-motivation and discipline, I knew I was going to graduate. So I made sure and I finished school. Dale came to my high school graduation, just a few months old, and I even participated in prom. So I didn't give up everything. I still tried to experience some of the main high school things, but I was ready to be a mom and take on that role. Unfortunately, my ex-husband wasn't so ready to grow up, and totally understandable. He was still trying to do the teenage thing and go out with friends, and I just was at home with my son and trying to make things happen for us. Working and trying to put food on the table was kind of my goal to kind of make a life.
Absolutely. So he was born and you immediately started working, or what was your path once that happened?
Yeah, well, I had actually worked. I taught gymnastics coming through high school and out of high school, and then got some just kind of one-off jobs. And I think I was 19, and I actually kind of stumbled across a job based on a friend that worked at Express Scripts. And so I started working there. I started at the very lowest position, receptionist. When I was 19, Dale was a year and a half old, and that was really the start of my career. I really, asked a lot of questions about, how I could move up in the company and build a career, and just hard work, and spent a lot of hours away from Dale, but spent a lot of hours trying to build a career there, and actually was there for 29 years.
That's impressive, and that's obviously how we met, or at least you and I know that. And I think we met probably in the early 2000s. And I remember you bringing both of your kids into the office, and you referred to him as Little Dale, and you have your daughter Jordan. So that was probably what year? Early, like I said, early 2000s. And I remember you as a very strong, independent woman. That's something that I think you've carried throughout your whole life. So it's commendable. You hear a lot of stories of people that get pregnant at that age, and I don't know that they have that sense of direction to be independent and really focus on what's needed to be that parent. So I commend you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It took me a long time to be able to say this out loud, but I actually beat the statistics. I had 2 kids by the time I was 21, and being a teen parent, not a lot of women are able to pull themselves out of that, and so I now look at that as something that I conquered, as kind of beat the statistics, and something to be proud of.
Absolutely, that says so much about your personality, your will, and your drive to take care of those kids. So
I actually credit my gymnastics coaches a lot for that. I was in the gym, up to 12 hours a week, and working hard, and you have to have that self-discipline and self-motivation, and so I've run into them as I've gotten older, and have expressed that to them and thanked them for. It wasn't fun at the time,
right?
But that's really where I got my drive.
Which you realize over time, I think a lot of kids do take what those coaches have to say, whatever sport, and it's almost like another form of parenting. It's another form of discipline that prepares you for the real world, because you're not going to like every boss, you're not going to like their style, but you try to adapt to their ability to get you to be the best person you can be with whatever the sport may be.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, kind of walk us through how things progressed as the kids got older and you were still continuing your career.
Yeah. So, still working full time. The kids were involved in sports because I really felt like that was really important for them. Dale was in hockey, Jordan was in gymnastics, later did cheer. And so we were just kind of doing our thing. We were kind of like the 3 musketeers growing up together, really. And it was in about 3rd grade that I noticed that Dale was struggling a little bit in school. It was hard for him to get homework done, and realized that, one of his teachers really called it out as him maybe having ADD or ADHD. And so that was really kind of the start of our kind of therapy and psychology journey together. We really went together for him to get some coping skills, and how to get his work done and how to try to be organized, and me how to help him do those things, and also how to communicate. Our brains worked very differently, and so that was really the start of our journey of going to psychologists and a lot of therapy and trying to work through things.
So this was 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And this was through an external party, not someone through the school?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, his teacher was the first one that really kind of identified him not being able to pay attention and get things done. And then she suggested that maybe we reach out to a private counselor,
right.
One-on-one counselor.
Which makes sense, and I think that's a valid response, or it's someone that's really trying to help a kid that's struggling. I mean, having 3 children, we go through different phases with each one of them, and you want to have that pointed out or recognized so you can help them through their journey. And like you said, and I think it's so important, our brains are wired differently as a parent versus that child, and you're not always going to mesh, and you might need some third-party insight. So how did he perceive that therapy?
Well, I'll just say throughout his psychology therapy journey, especially later, he just kind of went along with it. This is what mom says I have to do. But even in his later therapy days, I'm just going to tell him what they want to hear so I can get out of here. He was very introverted. He didn't talk about emotions at all and feelings at all. Unlike my daughter, everything, she always she still does wear her emotions on her face, on her sleeve. But he just did not really, talk about it at all. He was very introverted and kept everything in, which, as a young parent, you don't really understand all of that. That's one of the reasons why I was so happy to get the help through the initial counseling that we got, because, your kids don't come with a instruction booklet, and I was the first person out of all of my friends that had kids, so I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just trying to make it through, every day.
Absolutely.
But Dale, he thrived in hockey. He was an amazing big brother. Jordan just idolized him, and he had a lot of, a huge social life, a lot of friends, and always wanted to make people laugh, and very goofy, had the cheesiest smile. Mm-hmm. And so he was doing great. He was a goalie in hockey. He was naturally talented, because I couldn't afford all the extra goalie lessons or anything. He was just naturally talented. He played N-line and ice hockey, and he was really thriving. And then it was about early high school, where all the boys that played club hockey together kind of started to go on their different teams. And you could just kind of tell Dale was losing his way a little bit. He started experimenting with alcohol and smoking a little pot, and maybe a little more pot as he got older. And, that's just not good for a developing brain. And he just could not understand that concept. And so he and I battled quite a bit about that, trying to get him to go to school. And that's really probably late freshman year, sophomore year, where I really noticed a significant change in him, more isolation from his friends, kind of started having a disinterest in some of that, even bouts of depression, or I kind of called them manic episodes, right? He would hold everything in for a really long time, and then he would just have this outburst. And even then started threatening suicide. That was one of his, I don't really know how to describe it, maybe cries for help. Mm-hmm. And so over time, I kept saying, look, we can't be using this as your, out every time we have an argument. I understand you want help. I'm here to help you, but you can't be saying that every single time we get in an argument and you get in this kind of manic state. And so he stopped saying it to me. And little did I know, he was still feeling those things for a really long time. After high school, Dale really didn't know what he wanted to do. He had a few cooking jobs or working in restaurants, and he decided to go to culinary school. He graduated, just like hockey. He was kind of naturally talented in cooking. Didn't get that from me. That's probably why he wanted to go learn how to cook. And he graduated from culinary school and just couldn't really figure out how to get into a career in it, and so kind of went back to the working in restaurants and bars that weren't kind of that upscale culinary setting. But he was doing okay. Set him up in an apartment. He was maybe 21, 22 at the time, and he met a girl, which he had dated in high school, and but met a girl, and they became pregnant. So he had a little girl on the way, which added a whole nother level of pressure for him. He had some other things going on. He was still drinking, and he was trying to make rent, so he had a lot of just pressures coming at him, and then definitely with his little girl that was on the way. And so it was my birthday week. He was actually the first one to call me on my birthday that week. And which he was usually the last, because he would, Mom, I forgot, I'm sorry. But he called me on my birthday, and I was actually getting ready to go out of town for work. And we made plans to get together that weekend when I was back in town, and I think he was off work that Saturday or something that we made plans. So I thought everything was okay. And I was at my work event, and I had just gotten back to my hotel room, and my phone rang. It was about 11 o'clock. Actually, I have the exact time. It was 11:02 p.m.
Yeah.
And it was Dale's phone calling me. And of course, at first, my heart was like, oh gosh, Dale's calling me. What does he need? And it was his friend. A friend had found him in his apartment. And he had had a few rough days, which I later learned. And she basically told me that he was in really bad shape. He was really hurt. I asked if she could help him, and she said, no, I can't. And I just said, help him, like, why can't you help? Like, I couldn't even comprehend what she was trying to tell me. And a police officer, I had asked her if she had already called 911, and she said yes. And then during that quick conversation that she and I had, a police officer had gotten on the phone and confirmed who I was, and then confirmed the news that Dale was gone. And so there I was in my hotel room, out of town, by myself. That's what I said to the police officer. I don't even know what to do right now. I'm literally by myself in a hotel room in a city that I know no one except for the people that I work with. And so I called one of my coworkers, and she came over to my room. Her name's Abby. She's amazing. She became my person through all of that night, and over, like, we're still really close. And she just sat with me, and just really, we didn't say much. She just sat with me, and she helped me book a flight the next morning because it was too late to get a flight out, and helped me get my things together, and helped me get an Uber and everything, and get to the airport for the longest flight of my life. I just wanted to get home. I wasn't with Jordan. I couldn't comfort her. Wasn't with my family, and so they all met me at the airport, and then of course, went into this blur of the next month or two of, I don't remember a lot of it, but it was obviously the most difficult thing I've ever been through.
Absolutely. Excuse me. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I can't imagine, especially being out of town, trying to grasp the concept and just the emotions wrapped around that, and just wanting to immediately, time hop home. That would be my first thing. I'd want to be home. I'd want to understand what's going on with my family. And it's amazing you did have, at least you did have people there with you from your workplace. And it sounds like she was amazing, just letting you process the information without even having to say anything.
Yeah, just not feeling alone, just to have somebody else in the room with me was like, it's exactly what I needed, because I didn't even have words. One thing I didn't mention is I had to call everyone. I had to call his dad. I had to call my mom. I had to call my daughter, like all of those things, because social media is great when you really want to get things, get good information out, but it's a really challenging thing when you have an event like this, to make sure that all the people that need to know personally from their family of things that happen. And so that was part of what I had to navigate that night, was making sure that my family knew before, and his family knew before it got leaked on social media.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. I can't imagine wanting to control the narrative. I mean, for sure, as the mom, as the parent, you feel that as your responsibility, and you also want to shelter and take care of those that are closest to him. So how did your family take the news in general? I mean, explain that.
I mean, everyone reacts differently. His dad was angry. His sister was quiet, just a lot like me, just didn't have words to even express how we thought about it. We couldn't even process it, right. It was just I want to say I was surprised to hear the news, but I wasn't surprised. It was that phone call you could get at some point, but that I never wanted to get. Mm-hmm. And so, everyone processed it differently. Yeah, I don't even have words. I guess I'll say, I don't even really know how everybody was dealing with it, because I couldn't deal with it, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to navigate it. So it's kind of a hard question to answer.
Well, and a lot of people that we've spoken with that have dealt with death by suicide, they have said that their brain just goes into this state of probably protection.
Yeah.
That helps you get through those extremely traumatic, especially the beginning phase, and it could last for however long. It depends on the person, but it does seem like that is a common theme that a lot of people go through, and it's probably for the better to get you through those moments and help you organize your thoughts and how you're going to move forward, because it is such a traumatic loss.
Yeah, I mean, from notifying people to planning his funeral, and you are like almost like a walking zombie. I don't remember a lot of it, and I think that's kind of what you're saying. I think my brain was just kind of protecting me. People will say, "Oh, remember the last time I saw you was at Dale's funeral," and I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much for coming, but I'm sorry, I don't remember." It's just that you're just kind of in a fight or flight mode, just trying to get through really each minute. And then, take one step forward each day and try to get through each day after that.
Yeah. So you had to plan a funeral and go through that whole process. And another thing we've spoken to people about is there is a lot of attention in that beginning period.
Yeah.
A lot of support in that beginning period. And then it's like silence.
Yeah.
So that's the gap that you have to navigate as a human being and how you're going to push through.
Yeah.
So
I would say maybe for like the first month, food was being delivered and I wasn't even eating.
Yeah.
I'm like, can somebody please just donate this food? And people want to help, but there's not much, you can do. The best thing I could do was just get space, right? Just let me whatever I just needed time to process. And so I just stayed at home, and really the food was more for my family than me, but they were trying to make me eat. But then, just started talking about like, what are we going to do now? What are the next steps? How do we move forward? So I took a leave of absence from work, which my work was amazing. No questions asked. They just said, take all the time you need. Started going to church, called my pastor, set up some counseling sessions with them. My best friend that I've known forever, Brandy, she is a counselor. She connected me with a grief counselor in her office who is amazing. She's been my savior. I don't even know how to describe her. The one thing I think besides my faith that really has gotten me through. I did started going to a bereaved parents support group, which I think was really good in the beginning. It made me feel like I wasn't alone, just to hear other people, and be around other people that had lost their kids. And so those were kind of the immediate resources that I kind of reached out to and things that I did within that, after that initial month and kind of getting through the shock of it all.
And we spoke a little bit about this the other day. You found some advice really helpful that I thought would be helpful for our listeners, and how you kind of categorize people in your life that help you get through these moments versus others who might not be quite as helpful. Can you explain some of that mentality?
Yeah, I'll say I focused so much on my counselor because, I had been so independent and never needed help, and there wasn't an answer. I didn't know what to do. And so I had to ask for help, and I had to set aside that independent person, overly independent to a fault person, and reach out for help. And so my counselor gave me permission to do that. Like, it's okay to accept help. It's okay to reach into whoever is helpful for you. And so right off the bat, she gave me advice to put things and people and events or whatever it is into 3 different categories. People and things like church that are very helpful for you, that make you feel good, that are supportive. And then it's okay to put some people in that category that they're just not very helpful. They're maybe, they don't mean to, but maybe they didn't say the right things or didn't make you feel comfortable or supported in the situation. And then there's that group that, just they don't really fall in either, and you can kind of just be superficial. And for me, that was one of the most helpful things because I didn't know how to navigate it. I didn't know how to tell my story about Dale or even talk about him. And so to create a small group of a small support group and a small group of my larger life that I could really focus on, that I could trust and feel vulnerable with, one of the most helpful things for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as I've told you, I'm going to start thinking about that in everyday life, because I think that is smart. Instead of trying to go out with this broad, brush, you really do focus on the people that are going to get you through to the next phase. And then it's not that others don't mean well, it's just not something that's going to help you move forward. So I think that's great advice. Yeah. And it's wonderful that that person brought that into your life and continues to be part of your journey. And other things that you had mentioned were some organizations that I'd like you to speak about that have also been part of your healing and recovery.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of a task-oriented person, and so I created a kind of a task list of things that I wanted to do to honor Dale and remember Dale. The first one I did, sorry, this isn't the organization, but,
no, it's fine.
But I created a picture book. And so we went through all the pictures, for the funeral, obviously, but then they were all in these, whiteboards or whatever that I created a picture book. And that way I could just kind of like take some time and go through pictures and remember all the good times and not focus on the event that happened with him. And then I wanted to get involved in some organizations that, the main thing about Dale was the stigma of mental health. That's why he didn't really want to go to counseling. He didn't really want to utilize the resource of truly getting help through counseling and therapy. And so, because he was afraid of the stigma, he didn't want people to feel, he didn't want to feel weak in front of his friends or be made fun of. And so NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, is an organization that I got involved with. Would love to do more, and definitely will continue to stay involved. But they are an organization that really gets into like schools and talks to kids about mental health and suicide and educates them and tries to remove the stigma around mental health. And we've actually come a long way in the last 7 years since we lost Dale. I just can't believe how much we talk about mental health now. It's amazing. But it's never enough. Like, there's so much more that we need to do to remove that stigma from especially men and males getting help in mental health. And so that's a little bit about NAMI. And then AFSP, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I wanted to be very specific and partnering with an organization and donating to an organization that is focused on suicide prevention. Mm-hmm. Again, for some of the same reasons, right? Just making sure people are talking about it and they're willing to accept help and ways of coping. And not only for people that are, feeling suicidal, but also people that have lost people to suicide and or going through it with a spouse or partner or child. And so every year I do the AFSP Out of the Darkness walk here locally. Our local chapter, they do a walk every year at Grief Corps and really do a great job of allowing us to honor our loved ones that we've lost, but also provide so many resources while you're there for people that are survivors of suicide loss.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I'm sure our listeners will appreciate all of those recommendations for other organizations. And I love that you have a picture book to refer to that are probably your favorites over the years. And I know when Mike, my husband, lost his dad, he created a shadow box of all of his favorite things, donuts and just things that really remind you of the good times, and you want to keep that legacy alive and remember all the positive things that you experienced together as a family. So I think that's commendable, and I'm sure that helps you on tough days just to be able to refer back to those pictures and remember Dale. And tell me about his daughter.
Yeah, so there's many things that got me through and continue to get me through my journey. But he has a little girl. She was born 20 days after he passed away. And her name's Iris. And she's 7 now. And, she really helped me, I'll say a distraction, but also just a living memory of Dale. She's super smart, sassy, but she has Dale's eyes, which I love, just to kind of see his eyes through her. And she's just my shining light in a dark world that I live in. And I know how blessed I am that I have Iris, a part of Dale, because a lot of people that have lost their children don't have, grandkids or a granddaughter from their lost child. And so I am so fortunate to have that. And, we spend as much time as we can together and make great memories and when you lose someone, especially a child, you just realize how important it is to make memories in life, and you learn to appreciate life a little differently. Life completely changes as far as, before, going out and having fun, that was all great. And now it's like beautiful rainbows and going to see the mountains and making memories. And that is the most important thing to me, is just making good memories with Iris. So she's my shining star.
That's a beautiful story, and I think that's amazing that you do have a piece of Dale with you still today. You are very blessed in that sense and fortunate to have her in your life, and it's wonderful that you can create more memories and talk about her dad and watch her grow. So I'm thankful that you have that in your life. Yeah. So Stephanie, for our listeners, can you walk us through your experience with the different types of counseling or support you received and what has been the most beneficial for you?
Yeah. So I mentioned that I went to group counseling pretty early on, the bereaved parents group. And while in the beginning it was helpful, and I felt like I wasn't alone and people understood what I was going through, I just didn't find it helpful to find ways to move forward. I felt like it just kind of held me stuck in that place of, I lost my son and I don't move forward. But one thing I really found helpful was my one-on-one counseling. We kind of, in the beginning, established goals, like, what do you want to get out of this? And the very first thing was, I need to be educated about grief. I hadn't really lost a lot of people in my life, in my family, and I just didn't even know what I was going through, right? I was in the middle of it, but I didn't understand everything that I was experiencing was tied to grief. Like physically, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I couldn't get out of bed some days. There was just all this physical along with the emotional side of it. And so learning about the different stages of grief, it's kind of like anger and denial and depression, and at some point maybe get some kind of acceptance of it. So just kind of understanding what those, kind of gray area, but still stages of grief were, really helped me understand what I was going to be going through, and also kind of what my goals were, in counseling. My counselor suggested a journal. So I would take my journal and I'd go to the cemetery, and that's kind of was my thing that I did by myself. And then in my counseling sessions, my therapist would really help me through holidays. What are you going to do? Christmas is coming up or Thanksgiving's coming up. Help me kind of prepare and kind of talk through scenarios, and maybe even throw out some ideas, have an empty chair at the table or light a candle or, whatever it might be for our family. And just, help me process those feelings before and after. And so I really found that helpful because I didn't know what to expect, right? And so it really helped me prepare for things I might feel. Now, it could have turned out totally different, but she also gave me permission, kind of like the 3 buckets of people, gave me permission to say no, right? I just don't feel like getting out of bed today. It's okay. You don't have to go to the niece's birthday party or whatever, right? It gave me permission. She gave me permission to put myself first, which I, as a mother, you never do, right? But in that time, that's what I needed to heal and try to find ways to move forward and cope.
Absolutely. And I think knowing you, working together, and just knowing the strong, independent woman you are, you spoke to me a little bit about allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And I feel like that is really hard because you're on constantly. And so to kind of let that guard down, I'm sure she's helped aid you in doing that and saying no, because you're always like, yes, 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 I will do it. I will get through it. I will make sure it happens. And I feel like for someone like you who's always put on that, strong front and force, that's something that you probably had to really lean into and be comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but also I'd even tell my story. She actually would coach me through, how are you going to talk about it? When somebody says, how many kids do you have? Mm-hmm. I have to answer that question. Well, I just started a new job. I've had to answer that question, 15 times in the last 30 days. So just, helping me tell my story. And the more you do it, the the more I can talk positive about Dale and not focus on the loss. The more comfortable I feel with sharing my story and being vulnerable with people, like you said, and not worrying as much about how other people might perceive me. One big part of it was, I used to like to go have fun and listen to live music and go dancing. And I just felt like after I lost Dale, I was under such like a microscope. I was in a glass bubble. Everybody was looking at me. What is she going to do? How is she going to act? How is she going to react? And I didn't do those things for a long time. I just kind of sat on the sidelines. If I did decide I wanted to go and get out of the house one day, and just kind of watched everybody else move forward in life. And I just kind of sat there and, I wanted to do it, but then I was like, no, I just didn't know how to experience joy. And that's one thing that she really helped me through as well, is to try to get me to really kind of relearn how to experience joy in my life, and gave me, again, permission to have joy in my life again. And it's okay to have that, even though you've had such a big loss.
That's incredible. And do you feel like it was more like her advice was baby steps toward that joy, just like one little thing at a time? How did you move through that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's been 7 years, and I went to counseling every week straight for a year and a half, and then kind of pulled back to monthly for the next, I don't even know how many years. And I still talk with my counselor when situations arise. And so that did not happen overnight at all, right? It was baby steps, like, well, maybe just try to go to church and sit through worship, and, or I joined a Bible study group, which was really outside of my comfort zone, because that's a really vulnerable place to be, and kind of just sharing about your faith. But it actually gave me a safe place to share my story about Dale. And so, just little baby steps like that. And eventually I have gotten back to where I can go to concerts again and have fun and experience joy. But, I always incorporate Dale into anything that comes up in the moment. I'm not afraid to share. Oh gosh, this reminds me of the time, when whatever, it might be with Dale. And so I'm never afraid to bring him up. Again, it kind of goes back to that. It might make people feel a little uncomfortable, but I'm not going to let that stop me from sharing how great of a son Dale was, and how big of a part of my life he was. I mean, I had him when I was 17. That he was my reason and my motivation. You talked about what were your goals in life, and when you get pregnant at 17, you don't really have goals. I wasn't going to be a competitive gymnast anymore, right? And so he being a mom to him and my daughter Jordan really were my goals. And so huge part of my life, and love sharing stories about him and hearing others share stories with me.
And it's awesome to see a smile on your face when you talk about him, because I'm sure it took quite a long time to get there, and to feel like you can talk about him, cherish those positive memories, and help others in their journey if they're struggling with a son or a daughter or whomever in their life that might be exhibiting signs of this is real, this might happen. And you kind of have shared the signs that you probably over time recognize, and how you move through when something did happen, how you're getting to that next positive level within your own life, and enjoying those memories with your granddaughter, which again is a complete blessing.
No, I think, the biggest thing is just, I want everybody to know that Dale was an amazing kid. He really cared about people. He was always even the one that would stand up for the person that was getting picked on. I actually think he got in a fight in high school and got in trouble because some kid was being picked on, and he stood up for him, right? We talk about kind of the long term. People think, oh, you went to counseling and you're doing better and you can experience joy. I still have days where I just don't want to get out of bed. I mean, it's not you go get help and everything is okay. I mean, when you lose someone, you don't just give up that person, you give up your vision of what you think life might have been like with them, or that they would have been in life, right? I mean, what would Dale have been like as a dad? I ask that question all the time, and my counselor always said, you can't do what ifs. Don't do what ifs. It's impossible, right? But, all Dale's friends are getting married, and I didn't know how to navigate that. His best friend got married, and I'm so happy they incorporated him into, had a picture of him and, up in the reception area, But just navigating that's something I talked to my counselor about. Like, I just don't know how I'm going to feel that day, or how to get through it, because I want that moment. I had, that vision of, dancing with my son for that son mom dance, at his wedding, and I'm never going to get that, right? And one thing that I haven't mentioned is my daughter. I was really focused on me, but I also wanted to be strong for her. But I think one thing that people don't realize is the effect of a loss on a sibling. Mm-hmm. There's not a ton of resources out there. I tried to bring her along with my journey, and it just didn't fit for her. She was a lot younger, right, and didn't want to show up to the group, of parents that had lost their kids. Siblings kind of get lost in all of it. She felt like she had to be strong for me, around me. And so that's another thing that was really helpful in counseling. We did go to counseling together, but we both accepted the fact that we didn't have to be strong for each other, that we could be vulnerable together. And so we created those, we go to the cemetery together. And that's really a time where we can just be vulnerable together. And, we talk about Dale all the time, obviously, because we're the three that have we were the three that created all those memories together. But I really think that's one area that we can do better, just to provide more resources for siblings that have lost their loved ones, because there's not a lot out there.
I agree with you. And we did speak with one woman who lost her husband that talked about the, obviously it was their father, but for younger kids and kids, I'm sure siblings, et cetera, that there are camps and there are some things out there, but I don't think they're widely known, and there probably aren't many that are, advertised. It's a different, you always think of that first level impact, and I think there needs to be a lot more care surrounding that full family, because everyone's going to struggle, and they need to have more resources, especially for young people processing information when they're not adults yet. I mean, that's an incredible burden to bear at that age. So that's good insight, and something that I'm sure people could be looking into more as we focus more on mental health, because it is more of a buzzword these days, but we need to understand what that means, like what is out there. So,
well, in mental health and help means can be very different for everyone, right? Just because one-on-one counseling that worked for me, that may not be the best thing for everyone, but that was the best thing for me, that made me feel the most comfortable. Other people might find it more helpful to be in group setting, or really get more involved in their church or in their faith. Or in an organization, right? Such as NAMI or AFSP or whatever those organizations are that are out there. So there's not like a one size fits all, this is what you should do. You have to find the right thing that works for you, that's best for you.
Completely agree. Just like grief, it's so different. So is the steps to get through that, and the approach, and whether you need medicine or different therapy or, whatever it is, it's going to be very different per person. Yeah. And so giving people that respect and letting them walk through their own journey toward healing is something I think we all can do a better job of.
And one thing about grief too is, I talked about the stages, and that's kind of just textbook, right? But it's not linear. You don't go from step 1 to step 2. I actually saw a diagram that looked like spaghetti one time that had all the different stages and the feelings, and I was like, that is exactly how my brain feels, and still can feel, right? There are times that I'm still angry, right? Like, he should be here. He should be here seeing his daughter grow up and raising his daughter. And his friends say that too, he should be here. Like, that was one of the, I think it was Dale's birthday. His friend posted, a whole list of things like, Dale should be here. He should be here for my wedding as my best man. He should be, and it really struck home, struck a chord with me. But I think the biggest thing is everybody grieves differently. It's not linear, and it comes in waves, and everybody kind of has their own journey and their own support system and resources that work for them.
Thank you so much for being with us here today, Stephanie. We appreciate all of the information you shared, and look forward to sharing the resources with our listeners.
Thanks for having me and letting me talk a little bit about Dale, actually a lot about Dale, and share my story.
Absolutely. You've been listening to Life Beyond Loss, a podcast from Survival in the Trenches. If you'd like to get involved and help those struggling to cope with personal loss, visit us at our website, survivalitt.com, and follow us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast so we can continue to grow and reach more people in need. Together, we can make a difference.